All right, we are back. And where we left off in the last videos, we were rushing through short-term memory. So we're going to go back and talk about this again, and then we'll finish off with forgetting. This will be a little bit shorter video. Sometimes it's kind of hard to estimate how much you can get in 15 minutes. So sometimes you rush towards the end, and sometimes we're doing okay with time. So I'll keep working on it, and maybe by the end of the semester, we'll have these down to 10 minutes. Who knows? Anyways, so we were talking about short-term memory. We mentioned that the way that we could assess the capacity of short-term memory is by giving a serial recall test. So as I mentioned, this is what they use in IQ testing, because I guess the idea is that if you have a good memory, you have higher IQ, who knows. But anyways, so what they do here is the test giver is going to read off a series of digits to the test taker, and then the test taker has to recite the list of digits in the same serial order in which they were presented. And then the longest list that you can recite without making any errors is your memory span. Now, in class, when we have face-to-face classes, we always do this as a in-class demonstration, so we can't do that here. But generally speaking, it always works out. And on average, as studied by George Miller in 1956, the average memory span is between 5 and 9 chunks of information. Now, sometimes you'll hear 7 plus or 2 pieces of information, but it's actually chunks, because we could actually increase our memory span by chunking information. For example, when you remember a phone number, there's actually 4, 5, 6, 7, actually 11 digits in a phone number. But we don't remember 11 pieces of information. We remember like 4 chunks of information. First, we have the 1, especially if it's out of area code, so it's a 1. Then the next 3 is going to be your area code, and that's one chunk. So we can remember it as 209, or in my case, 559, 805, for example. So that's just one piece of information. And then the prefix would be the next 3 letter numbers. I live in Chowchilla, so we only have 665 there. So that's just one another chunk of information. But Merced could have 384, 272, maybe. I can't remember what's in Merced anymore, because it's been a long time since I lived there. But anyway, so there's a few of them there. But that's still another piece of information. So we have the 1 as one chunk, the area code is a second chunk, and then the prefix is a third chunk, and then the last 4 digits would be your last 4, so that's within our memory span of 5 to 9 chunks. So that's how it actually works. And this is why when we use mnemonic techniques, we could actually increase our memory span. So for example, some of you guys may be nursing majors out there, and when you have to take your anatomy class, you have to memorize different bones or different muscles or different cranial nerves or whatever. And we make these little mnemonics, these little memory tricks to remember the information. And so in the textbook, they actually talk about different types of mnemonics you can use to increase your memory span. We use them without even knowing that we're using them a lot of times. And so that's just a very helpful way to increase your memory span. Now, to give you an example of how this can actually be done, De Groot in 1966 did a classic study where he had novice and expert chess players study a list of chess pieces on a chessboard for 10 seconds. And after they studied their positions, he then removed all the pieces and asked them to put them back to the original position. Now, the idea here is that the experts, because they understand the game of chess, they have knowledge of the game of chess, they should be able to chunk that information because it's meaningful for them. Whereas the novices, all they know is that they have funny pieces like horses and castles and so on and so forth. And so they should not be able to chunk the information, so their memory span should be a lot lower. What he found out, though, is that in the initial study, when they put the pieces in random order, they had the same recall. And the recall was 7 pieces, which is in the range of 7 plus or minus 2. And the reason for this is that the experts could not chunk. Because when you play chess, there's only certain positions that the pieces can be in. For example, the rooks can only go diagonal or horizontal. The castles can only go vertical or horizontal. The bishops can go diagonal, and then the pawns can only go up 1 over 2, up 2 over 1, however it is. I don't play chess, but anyways. So because they couldn't chunk it, it was not meaningful for them. So they had the same recall. So then what they did next is they put it in a game-like situation. So now the pieces are where they were supposed to be. It was actually like a real game. Once again, whether it's in a game or random position, doesn't matter to the novices. They still can only remember 7. But now the experts could chunk the information, and then they could remember all 24 pieces. Now, what's interesting, though, is that when they put the pieces back to the original positions, they didn't take one piece and put it here, another piece over here, another piece over here. What they actually did is to groups of 5 or 6 pieces, put them in one area, another 5 or 6 in another area. So basically, it broke the chessboard into 4 quadrants, like the upper left, upper right, bottom left, bottom right. They remembered 4 chunks of areas instead of 24 separate locations. So that's how we could actually do it. And that's why when you take courses, you do much better in courses in your major because that information is more meaningful for you. You could chunk that information a lot better than if it's just taken in English class or whatever it may be. So that's how we can use chunking to our advantage. So make sure, if you have time, take a look at that section in the textbook and read over different types of mnemonic devices. Now, short-term memory, the duration is only about 20 seconds. So a good example here is that if you, well, not today, but suppose that you couldn't find a phone number on your cell phone, so you actually had to go back and look it up in a telephone book. And so you look up the number in the telephone book and you repeat it until you get to the phone and then you dial it. If you get distracted while you're trying to rehearse that phone number, that information will be quickly forgotten just like that. Or maybe if you're at a party, you meet a new person, maybe they're fairly attractive. Instead of just trying to remember what their name is, you are focusing on other aspects of that person. We'll just leave it at that. But then when you try to remember their name a couple minutes later, poof, it's forgotten because you didn't properly rehearse that information. And if you don't think about it, within 20 seconds, it's actually going to be gone. So once again, we have a very great memory system, but we do have some issues that we need to be aware of. And finally, we have long-term memory. So here the purpose is this is the permanent storage site of our memory traces. So they're spread out all through our cerebral cortex. It's not one specific location, but they're all over. The capacity is unlimited, which is good. So you never have to worry about learning too much information because you can't. You have unlimited storage capacity. The problem is that there's retrieval. And what we found out with, for example, with Alzheimer's patients is that memories can be forever because they can remember things from their early childhood, which is kind of interesting. They can't remember recent memories, but things way, way back they can still remember. So we know those memories are there, but being able to find those memories and bring them back into conscious awareness is always going to be the issue. So in the next video on forgetting, we'll talk more about the retrieval process and we'll talk about amnesia. And then there will be an interesting homework assignment that you'll have to do on amnesia. So quick video. We'll talk to you guys in the Zoom meeting. And once again, if you guys have any questions or any information that we cover, you can post it in the Q&A discussion board. You can send me an email. And remember, we could also have office hour one-on-one discussions if you want to do that also. Just let me know.